Welcome to the Bitchin' Siblings Podcast.
Well, everybody, welcome to the Bitching Siblings Podcast. I'm Jenny.
Hey guys, it's Amy. And guess what? We've got a special prize guest.
I'm back.
What's up, Chris? Guess who's back? Back again.
I've emerged
Chris is
from the
back.
Batcave.
What?
I have emerged from the Batcave.
You
Oh, okay.
didn't
That's what I thought I heard, but I was like, all right.
Chris has
Fucking
decided to grace us with his presence tonight, and I think we might have already scared him, and we just started. So we'll see how this goes.
So I told you guys last week, or last time we recorded, that we were going to talk about earthquakes. And I'm going to give you guys a little education on what I found. So, obviously, we know that an earthquake is what happens when two blocks of earth suddenly slip past one another. And the surface where they slip is called a fault or a fault line, a fault plate. And the location below the Earth's surface where the earthquake starts is actually called the hypocenter. And the location directly above the hypocenter, located on the surface of the Earth, is called the epicenter. So that is where directly underneath the Earth is actually moving. And I did not know that with earthquakes, you can have foreshocks, not just aftershocks. You can actually have like minor earthquakes to lead up to the big one. And then you obviously have aftershocks after that. And depending on the size of the main shock, an aftershock can continue for weeks, months, and even years.
So like
After
a
the main.
constant tremble?
Yep. Or like it will break and then you don't have one for a couple months and it's the same fault that's actually doing the moving.
So it's
You know, a
considered
few
the
weeks
same
later.
earthquake.
Yeah.
Because the epicenter is the same.
Hmm.
The depth is usually the same. It's just not as long.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's just in the same area. It's the same thing as an aftershock, but usually the bigger earthquakes will produce hundreds of small aftershocks for weeks, months, and or possibly years afterwards.
So I don't know if you guys can see this. See this map?
Yeah.
Yep.
All of those dark lines, those are all the fault plates in the world.
Wow, that's like every country border almost.
Just about. So I thought we were on the same fault line as California. We're not. Washington was on.
Okay, so I was going to say, clarify that. I thought you meant you and your husband, and I'm like,
My
dude, you
apologies.
are in Cali.
No. So when we were growing up
Okay.
in Washington, we are not.
Yeah.
We were not on the same fault line as California, which is the San Andreas. The Washington one is the Juan de Fuca plate,
That sounds
which makes
familiar.
sense. Yeah, because
Yeah, the
there's
Strait of Juan de
the Strait of
Fuca.
Juan de Fuca. So there's P waves and there's S waves with earthquakes. A P wave is not surface. I don't remember what it was called. So the S wave is the one that is the rolling one.
The rolling type of earthquake.
Mm-hmm. A P wave is more side to side.
Yes. Shaking.
Yes. So depending on what kind of wave is created by the plates when they're moving will determine whether it be a rolling or a shaking earthquake. And again, we know this, but some of our listeners may not. Earthquakes are recorded with a seismograph, and they are measured. Of course, I feel it, or I see it now. They're measured, and that measurement is called magnitudes. So each magnitude is like 10 times the number before it.
Yeah, like
It's
an
10 times larger.
exponent.
Yes. Thank you. My brain's still a little foggy from this bronchitis. So scientists cannot predict where an earthquake is ever going to occur or when. They can say that historically speaking, they can gauge information, but they can never actually pinpoint it like they could with volcanoes, or they can't see it coming like hurricanes or tornadoes or things like that. So there is no preparing other than just always being prepared for earthquakes. Um, and the rumor that there is earthquake weather is a myth. The U.S. Geological Service or Survey says there is no scientific evidence linking certain weather to earthquakes.
What would people say was earthquake weather?
So growing up, I don't know about other people, but growing up, Grandma used to say earthquake weather was like when the air felt very heavy and very like electrically charged.
Oh, so that's storm weather. That's like here,
yeah.
you can go outside and you're like, it's gonna storm.
Yeah. So it was very much like that, how I was told what earthquake weather is, but there's no proof that that's a thing. So,
Yeah.
and then there's a lot of information about P waves and S waves. So if anyone wants to know how those work, I got all of my information from the U.S. Geological Survey. But there's a lot of information that I couldn't fully understand about the P waves versus the S waves, and how the Earth knows which waves it's going to throw off. So if you want more information on that, check that out. It was really cool. So last week, Jenny and I talked about the earthquake that was in February of 2001. And I did some research on it, and it was at 10:54 a.m. on February 28th of 2001. And they called it the Nisqually earthquake. And it was 30 to 40 seconds long.
Yeah.
And it was a 6.8 magnitude, approximately 30 miles below Olympia, which is the state capital. And that was in the Juan de Fuca plate. It caused upwards of $4 billion in damage.
Amy, have $4 billion in damage then?
Yes,
or
then.
Okay.
Then. And approximately.
And let's remind everybody that was 2001, so it was
Yes, so
22 years ago.
Yeah. And then there were 400 reported injuries from that. That is the most recent damaging earthquake that Washington had seen. So that is very cool information about the earthquake that we lived through. Do you guys have, Chris, since you weren't on last week's, I want to hear about your experience in that earthquake.
I remember it was in the morning. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking sometime between like 8 and 10, but I was working nights and I'd gotten home at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I had been sleeping for just a little while, and I thought I heard jackhammers. They were doing construction outside of my house or outside of my apartment. So I was kind of pissed. I'm like, for real? Like, I get 3 hours of sleep and y'all are just pounding on the pavement. And I look outside and there's nothing. No construction work is going on. I could see my chandelier kind of swinging. I'm like, what the is going on? My TV's just kind of scooting to the edge of the TV stand. My the blind,
and this is back when the TVs were like CRTs.
Yeah, the tube TVs. It was only like a 19-inch. It wasn't nothing big, but it was still scooting to the edge of the table.
Well, and that's saying something, because even though it was only 19 inches, those fuckers weren't light.
No,
like
that was
they are
probably
now.
a good 50 pounds or so.
Yeah, and it was moving.
Yeah. Well, and then my sliding glass curtain things. The
the
blinds,
shades. Mm-hmm.
those were kind of whipping around. So I peeked through it, and from what I could tell at the moment now, I had just woken up and it was only 30, 40 seconds, and I probably slept through the first 10 or 15. But I would have, knowing what you just said, or knowing now what you just said, I would say that was an S wave earthquake because I saw the ground kind of rolling.
Mhm.
Yep.
It wasn't a lot, but it was definitely rolling.
Yep.
Yeah.
That one definitely was an S wave.
Yeah.
Most of the ones apparently in the Juan de Fuca plate would be an S wave. There's going to be a few here and there that would be a P wave, but yeah.
I guess that would all just depend on the reaction of the snap when the earthquake
Mhm.
Yeah.
happens, you know.
Mhm.
And why do
Yeah.
they call it P wave? Why not like W wave? Because W on its side looks like it's shimmying, where a P just looks like it's walking in circles if it starts to jitter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some sort of like scientific word that's behind it, but they've just shortened it to P wave and S wave just to, layman's terms. I'm sure somewhere in there there's an explanation as to what that stands for or what it's in, what it's in place of, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
P
Maybe.
wave is because it's perpendicular waves.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just
that
looked at my
makes-
papers.
That would make sense. They're going,
So is an S
So,
wave
yeah.
a slimy wave or a silly wave or
One
Now
moment.
she's looking.
S is for seismic.
Mm.
That's at least what I'm seeing.
So
in
maybe
here.
they thought everything was a seismic wave, and then as they did more research, they found that certain ones shake a different way, so they named those ones the P waves, and
Perpendicular
everything
waves.
else was everything else is an S wave. You know what I mean? Like it's
And
I'm
but
sure
S
that's-
does make sense because it does, like, if you put an S on its side, it looks like it's
slithery?
rolling.
Like a wave.
It's- yeah. Yeah.
So Jenny, last week we said something about how you were in school and you saw the building literally going up and down.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went refresher. I went to a high school that was an older high school, but it had been added on to. So the original part of the school is a single story, and then the add-on was attached by a sky bridge, and that was 2 stories. And I mean, it was. I'm not saying cheaply made, but we were so with that explanation of the way the building was. We were in the old part of the building doing a class project. It was my senior year. And I wasn't actually in my classroom because we were doing this group project or whatever, and the choir room was like right next to where the room that we kind of were in, and so we had asked the choir teacher if we could utilize the choir room to like meet with our team quietly so we could do like this group project or whatever, because there just wasn't a lot of room in the classroom, blah blah blah. So we were in there, and all of a sudden we heard what we thought was like a freight train, and then we all kind of forgot where we were for a moment and thought maybe we were in the old or in the new part of the building downstairs, because when you were downstairs, if people ran upstairs, if there was enough people in a classroom, it made noise. So we thought maybe the kids upstairs must be making noise, and we realized, oh wait, we're in the old part of the building. It's a single story building, like there is nobody upstairs. And then the choir room looked out on the sky bridge that attached to the new part of the building. And so there was windows there because that was the edge of the building. And like, if you looked out the window, you could like see the school building like normal. And then you could see the trees in the sky. And then all of a sudden you could see the school building, and then you could see the trees in the sky. Like everything was like rolling, like you were, like you said, an S sideways, where it was just like, first you saw the building and then you didn't. And then you saw the like, it was the weirdest thing. And honestly, I would have gone to my deathbed thinking that earthquake was longer than 30 to 40 seconds, because I feel like in my mind, replaying it back, it took 30 to 40 seconds in my head to recognize that it was an earthquake,
Right?
before we did anything, because it was you heard it, and then you kind of started to feel it, and then you saw it, and then by the time you were able to like fully immerse all of those experiences in one, it was before you realized what was going on. So unfortunately for us, it's cold in Washington in February, and we had to be evacuated out of the building after the earthquake just to make sure, and we weren't allowed back in because it was determined that there was a structural damage done to the school. But there was a ruptured or almost ruptured gas line or something that they were making sure didn't pose a risk to us by going back into the building. So if you were a senior or a junior and you had an off-campus pass, you could leave. Well, I was a senior and I had an off-campus pass, so I was like, oh, well, I can leave. Because I wasn't in my classroom, when this happened, my purse and my bag and everything were in the classroom. So when we evacuated the building, I didn't think to go get my purse and stuff. We just evacuated the building. So I couldn't leave until like 3 when the school day was over. And even then, like we had to like wait because they had to go into each classroom and like bring people's things out because they were only letting so many people in the building. So I got stuck because my purse was in the actual classroom and I was not in my classroom when the earthquake hit.
That sucks.
So
yeah,
yeah,
that does
it
suck.
did.
I got to go home early. So I remember I was in a psychology class, and the classroom I was in was at the end of the building. Our school was single story, very old. But it was lined up right next to a railroad tracks. And I remember we all kind of looked at each other thinking, man, that train's loud today. And it took, I want to say it felt like 30 to 40 seconds before we realized it was a
Right.
earthquake. And then we got under our desks, and like you guys, we had to be evacuated to make sure that everything was safe. They started letting people back in, but I ended up going home early. I don't remember how I got home because I wasn't driving yet. So I don't know if like one of our aunts came to pick up some of our cousins and I was able to go home with them. But I remember getting home and I asked Grandma if everything was okay at home. And she said, yeah, nothing looks any different. However, it does, look like a tornado hit your bedroom. Because I hadn't cleaned up that day. But yeah, she had gone up to my room and looked to see if there was any damage. And she's like, no damage per se, but your room looks like a pigsty. So, but I don't remember, like, so as far as the look of it, how you guys are both saying you saw it kind of be a rolling one, we never looked out the window. Like, I don't recall anything out
When
the
I
window.
saw the ground moving like that, that's when it hit me like, oh, this is a fucking earthquake. And then right about that time, it was just about done.
Yeah.
See, and mine was weird because I didn't see the ground. I saw the building, and then I didn't see the building. And then I saw the building, and then I didn't see the building. And so that's a fucking mind trip.
Yeah.
Because that's not supposed to happen. So, like, had it been the ground looking like it was moving, it might have clicked faster for me. But because what I was seeing was so out of left field, it took me a hot minute to put, like I said, the sound and the movement and the look of it all together to go, oh my God, that's an earthquake. Because, when you stereotypically, when you watch movies and they portray earthquakes, they are the shaking ones. Those are the ones that you see video of or the ones that you see in movies. And so, we had, and we discussed this last time, but we've been through some minor earthquakes, but that's the biggest one I've ever experienced. And that didn't look or feel anything like what I thought it would.
Speaking of movies and their portrayal of earthquakes, I don't know what movie it was, but one of the first movies I ever saw was the ground opening up like a crack and stuff just falling away.
I want to say the first movie that you saw that was like that was probably Land Before Time.
Oh, maybe it might have been. It might have been.
I only say that because I literally just watched that movie while I was sick.
Probably not wrong, because that would have been young enough where it stuck in my head. But that's what
But that's your
that's what
yeah.
scared me about earthquakes is like, I don't want to fall into the middle of the earth and never be seen or heard of again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do I get out? What do I eat? Where do I sleep?
They make it look so post-apocalyptic. And don't get me wrong, I remember seeing video of some areas in downtown Seattle that definitely looked, I don't want to say post-apocalyptic, but definitely worse for wear because, sides of buildings had collapsed and stuff, but nothing like you see in the movies. And not that I believe everything I see in the movies and in TV, but, when you grew up knowing that that's something that you will, statistically speaking, experience in your lifetime living on the coast, and then having not really had anything prior to that to base it off of, it's hard not to, as a kid, grow up with that stuff. And I don't know about you guys, but my initial fear originally of earthquakes came from the Northridge quake, I believe, that
Oh, in the
happened in
early
what,
90s.
89? And I remember the amount of earthquake drills we had to do after that because that's part of the country, California, gets a ton of earthquakes, and that earthquake made it disturbingly clear how little or how very ill prepared people were.
1994, by the way, was the
No,
Northridge.
no. There was one in 80. Okay, so it wasn't Northridge. Which one was it? It was like in 87 or 88 or 89.
In LA or in San Francisco?
LA. I think it was
LA.
LA. Yeah, because it was the double-decker bridge, wasn't it?
Yeah, the double-decker bridge collapse. That was not 94 because Northridge was...
I just looked it up and it said Northridge earthquake 94.
Okay, so it wasn't Northridge. Then it was a different one, and now I'm going to have to Google that because there was one, and I remember being like in kindergarten, so it couldn't have been more than 87 or 88. But I wanted to say it was LA. 19...
LA's had a couple of them in our lifetime.
Uh-huh.
Two or three,
My
like,
husband
big
lived
ones.
through the Northridge. He lived in Southern California at the time that one happened.
Oh, it was in the San Francisco Bay.
Mm.
It was the Loma Prieta earthquake.
And what year was that?
1989, October 17th, 1989.
Gotcha. October 17th, 1989. I would have been in kindergarten.
Okay.
So,
Well,
I
then
mean,
maybe I
that
was in
makes
first
sense because, like, the entire time I was in school, I remember several earthquake drills every year.
Yeah.
Every
year, yeah. I just remember that being like the major one because they started I remember the teachers would bring TVs in and they'd start showing the news, and that was something they never did before. I mean, obviously the Challenger, they did that for, but the earthquake
I
and
don't remember that one.
what
I was-
Challenger?
Yeah, that was 87. That meant I was 3.
But you remember reading about it, but you just obviously don't remember experiencing it. That's a different thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm
But-
saying.
I remember being in school and watching the video of these earthquakes and like these buildings just being demolished, and that was very post-apocalyptic looking. Thank goodness what we dealt with in 2001 was a big earthquake, but I don't feel like it did.
That young, when you're in kindergarten or second grade or whatever, when you're seeing bridges collapse and cars falling
Yeah.
off bridges, it hits you way harder than it does when you're an adult,
Yeah.
And you can
And-
process what's happening.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can process what's happening, and sadly, but you're kind of tuned for it's no big deal anymore. You've seen it a few times, You're
Mhm.
Yeah.
conditioned, I
Mhm.
guess is what I mean to say.
Yeah,
I mean, it's still traumatizing, but just
Yeah.
on a different level.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Quick little side thing. I did a little bit of research on the largest recorded earthquakes. And now, granted, I don't know when they started recording them and started like measuring them, but the largest earthquake on record was on May 22nd in 1960, and it was a 9.5 earthquake in Chile.
I was gonna say, I bet you I know where it was at. It was in Chile.
Yeah, so that left 2 million people homeless, injured at least 3,000, and killed approximately 1,655 people. And the damage it caused with inflation landed right around $4.8 billion.
In
Which is
1960s money? So I
no.
wonder what that
In
conversion is now.
1960s money, it was 550 million.
Oh,
Adjusted
okay.
for inflation, it would be 4.8 billion.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then that triggered a massive tsunami across the Pacific, which hit New Zealand, Japan, and the Philippines. And in Hawaii, the tsunami devastated the coastal town of Hilo, killing 61.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the second largest, so back to how they measure it, the largest it can be is a 10.0 earthquake. That's the largest base. I don't know how they know that it can't be any bigger than that, but I don't know. Second largest, Prince William Sound in Alaska, March 28th, 1964, was a 9.2 earthquake. And then December 26th, 2004 was a 9.1 in Sumatra, Indonesia. The fourth largest was a 9.0 earthquake in Sendai, Japan on March 11th, 2011. And then the fifth largest was a 9.0 in Kamchatka, Russia on November 4th, 1952. So those are the five largest earthquakes on record.
Interesting.
So the most recent one would have been the Japan one, which is that's the one that I believe caused the Fukushima.
Yes. Nuclear power disaster.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the largest one. Well, I mean, I guess Indonesia was slightly larger in our lifetime, but still, that one didn't seem like it caused as much damage. And maybe it was because of where it was at.
I don't think the earthquake itself is what caused the damage. It was the tsunami.
The one in Indonesia says that it killed 227,900 people.
Well, yeah, but that one is a lot to do with the tsunami.
In Indonesia?
Yeah. That one was the tsunami, not the Fukushima tsunami, but the other tsunami, the one that happened like on the Christmas Day or the day after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that
in,
one,
Thailand or something.
It was in Indonesia. That one, it does say that was the largest disaster in terms of loss of life.
Yeah.
Of the five.
That's 250,000 people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny though that one doesn't stick out nearly as much as the Japan one. And maybe Japan is, like we said, because the nuclear power plant had issues, so there was side effects.
It had issues because of the tsunamis.
Well, yeah, but like that's the one that I think of when I think of a massive earthquake in our lifetime.
Yeah, because I don't really think of the Indonesian one. The Indonesian one, I only think of the tsunami. I don't think of the earthquake that happened because the earthquake didn't cause damage. It just created a really big tsunami.
Yeah.
So it's not the earthquake that I think about. It's the tsunami. Yeah, so you're right. Like if I were to put that on a natural disaster, I wouldn't think of it as related to earthquakes. Even though tsunamis are almost always directly related. Yeah. But that's just not where my mind would go.
So since 2001, when we lived down here in 2014, summer of 2014, there was a minor one in the Napa Valley area where we were living at the time. And so many people reached out to me and they're like, "Oh, are you guys okay?" I'm like, I didn't feel shit. Mm-hmm. And then there was one recently. Again, people were asking me and I'm like, I was asleep. I didn't feel shit. Like,
now, Amy, didn't you live in California when, after the Japan earthquake, when there was a tsunami, there were some waves that came to your area. They were not major, they weren't big, but tell us about that.
So, I want to say that was 2010. No, that would have been 2011.
11, yeah.
Wait. Yeah, March. So that was right before. Yeah. Okay. So, some of the tsunami warnings came into Crescent City and Eureka, Arcata area, which is coastal towns. But we live 3 hours inland, and we did at that time as well. So it was never a big deal for us. However, some of the video of the waves crashing in Crescent City caused, like, those waves actually did cause damage, and not like a ton, but surprisingly decent amount for how far away we were from the earthquake.
And weren't they also having lots of things wash up ashore from that earthquake? Like
I
months
don't
later?
know. That's very possible. I didn't hear much about it because around the
I think they
time
found
that
stuff
happened.
all over the world.
Well, yeah, but I think it hit like the California coast. It got like the Northern California coast started to get it first, if I remember correctly, or they got a large amount right away, or I don't remember. There was something about that stuff washing ashore around that time that
Yeah,
was significant to that
it makes sense
story.
that was there, but that was nothing. Like, I was so inundated with people just checking on us to make sure we were okay, and I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
we live so far inland. I mean, unless that tsunami wave is the size of California in the first place, we're gonna be fine. Like,
Yeah.
come on. We don't have that many issues. They keep saying that we're
Due for the big one.
Yeah. And like I said when we talked about aliens, if it happens, I want to go right away. I want to be one of the first ones to die.
Oh, that is so sad.
No, like I don't want to have to deal with the aftermath.
You'll see
You
me
know what I
putting
mean?
more paint on, grabbing my surfboard, and hitting the waves, man.
I mean, I get it. It really just depends on one, how big it is, where it's
Yeah.
at, how far away from me you know.
I've always joked, because now we live in the good old Midwest, and in the 19 years that I've been here, I have never actually seen a tornado. There have been a few warnings, but I've never actually seen one.
You've never
No
seen a funnel
damage.
cloud?
I've seen funnel clouds. I've never seen one like touch to the ground and actually move like a tornado. There's a difference.
Oh.
But I've always said that I would prefer an earthquake over a tornado, because an earthquake, you have no goddamn clue is coming. So you can't stress about it. You just go about your life. And when it happens, you're just stuck dealing with it. Whereas with tornadoes, a large majority of the time, the weather is favorable for hours beforehand. And usually there are warnings saying, hey, we could potentially have this weather. So you have an opportunity to get yourself stressed and worked up. And oh my gosh, and do I have everything? And then I feel like
the grocery stores are empty.
Oh my God, yeah. And I feel like that's more damage to my psyche than just having to be strong in the moment, like when it happens, and then okay, now I can freak out.
Yeah.
Because then when you're, I'm more thinking about survival at that moment, because I'm not stressing. Whereas if I'm in a tornado, I'm like, oh my God, do I have everything? Do I have this? Do I have that? Oh my God, are we safe? Are this? Like, you don't have earthquakes. You don't have time to think about it. You just have to do it. Like, whatever it is that you have to do to protect yourself, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a tornado, that, I don't know. To me, I've just always said I would prefer an earthquake, just because if something like that is going to happen, I'd rather have just the same thing with surprises. I don't like to know I have a surprise, because then it stresses me out. So
since Jenny brought that up, Chris, what are your thoughts? One, have you ever seen a tornado?
In her definition, no. I have seen the aftermath. I mean, it was in the nighttime when it came through. So the next day.
Well, those are hard, to see.
But I thought I was dead that night. I thought I was going to die. I really believed I was going to die.
Is that the one that was when you were at the other house and you were at my house and then you went home, or?
No, I was in Upland doing a concert with Bill, where I was running sound and lights. All of a sudden, rain and wind came in, so we unplugged and shut everything down. We took it inside. It was like a little Quonset hut out on the square, and we tucked everything inside, closed the doors. There was crap flying everywhere. Tents, because people were camping out in the park. Picnic tables were whipping by.
And how did you stay safe from getting hit by any of the debris?
the Quonset hut we were in was by far no match to a tornado, but we found the inner office. It was like a framed room inside the Quonset hut. I don't know who belonged to that office, but me and the band, we found all the alcohol, put a flashlight in the middle of the room shining straight up, and we passed bottles all the way around the table that night. Probably 6 of us, 7 or so, I don't know. We all thought we were going to die. I mean, it was that
Damn.
bad. The wind was like a small tree branch sounded like a crack of thunder a mile away, just hitting that Quonset hut, because it was just a little tin metal building.
Yeah.
Damn.
See, and to me, that would be you haven't seen it because it's at night, but you've gone through it. I have not. I haven't even come close to that. I've had sirens go off and never seen anything, or experienced any damage or anything. I mean, I've experienced some crazy wind, don't get me wrong, but just straight line winds, which are just as damaging, but no funnel to that. But I have not experienced that. No.
Well, and this tornado was still 5 miles away.
Yeah.
Damn.
It was in.
I think I remember the one. Isn't that the one that went through Funk and then Wilcox and then down
Hildreth.
to Upland? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And dude, the flagpoles were.
And it was at night. You're right, because that's the one I remember where the alarms went off in the middle of the night. Well, not middle of the night, but like 11 o'clock at night or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
So tornadoes are classified as like F series. Do you
Yes.
happen to know what series that one was that came through your area, Chris?
There was probably a little one, like a 2 or a 3, maybe.
No, it would have been like a 0 or a 1.
Yeah, I mean, compared to what we could see out here, it was a little tiny one.
Tornadoes are measured on the Fujita scale or whatever, and it's measured by the trail of damage it leaves. So
Wow.
the more damage it leaves, the bigger it is. I mean, obviously certain wind speeds and everything too, but it's generally measured by its damage that's done.
That's crazy.
It's like the Tasmanian devil playing with Sonic the Hedgehog's rings.
Pretty
Ding, ding,
much.
ding, 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 ding. How much damage can I rack up?
Yeah. So that's why some of these straight line winds, we'll get tornado sirens that go off for those too, because they're straight line winds. They just come straight down like they're coming in off the mountain straight and coming in hot, but they can come in at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour and they can do just as much damage because it's a very large straight line of wind and it can stick around for, a couple of minutes.
That's crazy. That's absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, just take me out.
First I'm gonna enjoy it, and then once I'm done enjoying it, then I'm gonna strap on my boots, tighten my belt, and survive that shit.
Well, yeah, me too.
I mean, like if you make it through, yeah, that's like your only choice. But like I don't want to be like pessimistic or anything, but like I don't want to survive that. Like I don't want to have to deal with it. You know what I mean?
I want to have those moments with my grandkids, sitting on my lap. Oh, when I was your age, I took a 2x4 to the head through a Quonset hut in an F5 tornado.
Uphill both ways in the snow.
I came out, I cracked that thing over its own skull, and I told that tornado to go suck an egg.
Oh my
I
God.
want to have those kind of war stories. I survived
I mean,
that shit.
That's kind of cool. But yeah, no. Do either of you guys have anything else to add to that topic though?
Nope.
Natural disasters suck. I mean, they're scary no matter who
Well,
you
yeah.
are.
Oh, hell yeah.
Right?
Well, if that's all you guys have, just a reminder, everybody, shoot us emails. Send us your stories on like any natural disasters you've lived through and like your
Yes.
experience. That'd be kind of cool to go through. Ginny and Amy podcast at gmail.com. That's GINNYANDAMY podcast at gmail.com.
You can also reach us on Instagram at Bitching Siblings Podcast. That's it for tonight, guys.
Bye.
Bye.